Hello everyone! So 2 years ago I had no idea what a beta reader was, and a few years before that most people didn't know what they were. There's been a huge shift in maybe the past 5-10 years from traditional publishing to self-publishing, and because of that there's been a shift in the responsibility of the writer versus of the publisher. So with self-publishing, you're taking on the task of the traditional publisher and of the regular writer. So no matter what kind of publishing that you do, you should always incorporate beta reading into your process. Now to do this, typically you go through and you make your manuscript as perfect as you can by yourself. You should never ever send a first draft manuscript to your beta readers. It's just not cool. Just comb through it and make sure it's not riddled with plot holes because you can't polish a turd. Spare your beta readers and don't subject them to that. Please. So typically after you make as many edits as you can, you send it off to your beta readers, and based on their input, you incorporate those beta edits into your novel, and then you can send your manuscript to a professional editor. It's best to do the professional editing last because you want your big issues dealt with already. You don't really want your editor to be blinded by all of those mistakes. You want them to see deeper into the novel, and if the top looks bad, they're not going to be able to do that very well. If you give them a mediocre starting point, they might just be able to take it to the awesome level. But if you give them an awesome foundation, they're going to take it even higher. Their input, of course. I mean, you're the one that's gonna have to make the changes. Question 1 is, who needs beta readers? Pretty sure everybody needs one. A lot of people use beta readers even if they don't know it. A parent or a significant other or a best friend, anyone who reads your work and gives you feedback is technically a beta reader. And to be honest, most of us need that person to tell us whether or not we're crazy for taking our story in a specific direction. Even if you're considering not using beta readers, I'll go ahead and assume that you're kind of interested in the topic because you're watching this video, so go ahead and hear me out. If you're a writer, then you're one day hoping to get published and have your stuff read by thousands or even millions of people. You're not going to be able to please every single one of them, but you want to please most of them, specifically your target audience. What if your main character doesn't come across as relatable when you think they're perfectly relatable? If most of your beta readers tell you that they're not, then chances are you need to make some edits. You and your go-to critique partner are kind of biased on this topic. You hopefully know more about the character than you're actually writing down. You know the character's backstory, and unless you're putting all of that into your novel, then the reader's not going to know about it. That doesn't mean you should put all of it in your novel, that's not what I'm saying at all. But there's sometimes an element that's lost in translation, and it's something you're not going to see. That's what you need beta readers for. Everyone can benefit from a beta reader. They catch things that you've overlooked 20 times, like your character sprinting down a road after he just sprained his ankle, or a car that changed into a truck in the next chapter. They can catch big things like a character being really inconsistent or huge plot holes that you never even thought of. They're here to improve your writing, and it's valuable feedback that you need on the road to publication. Question 2 is, how do I ask for beta readers and where do I do that? So let's talk first about what you need to include when you actually announce you want beta readers. Your request should include some basic information about your novel so that potential beta readers know whether or not they want to invest their time and their effort in your story. Things like your genre, your word count, and your synopsis. Also, and this is very important, make sure your beta potentials know if there's any mature content or graphic scenes in your story. Yes, this is basic information, but it could save a lot of headaches with repetitive questions when they say, hey, how many words is it? A 75,000 word novel is going to be totally different than beta reading a 150,000 word novel. Decide what type of feedback that you want and then ask if that works well for your beta. If you want them to totally ignore grammar, then make sure that this is in your request. If that's the main reason they want a beta, then they're going to be upset if it turns out you don't want them to do that. You've wasted their time and yours by not being upfront about it. Determine how you want your feedback to be given to you. Do you want to message them on Facebook, Twitter? Do you want to be able to email them or Skype them? Make sure this is included in your request, as some people might not be okay with certain methods. Also include a list of questions for potential betas. Things like, what genre do you usually read in? Have you ever beta read before? What's your typical turnaround? How free is your schedule in the next few weeks? How old are you? Why do you want to be a beta reader? Are you a writer yourself? Are you male or female? You want to get to know your betas because you're going to be very vulnerable with them soon. The more you're able to converse with them freely, the better. Now to something that a lot of people ask about, where do I find beta readers? The internet, silly. Reach out to every social media platform that you're on and post a message saying you're looking for beta readers. Point them to a specific site or form that you're using that they can fill out if they're interested. Some ideas for this could be Goodreads, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, MySpace. Just kidding, I mean, who uses that anymore, right? Nobody. Both Goodreads and Facebook have groups specifically centered around finding beta readers, so make sure you dig deep on those platforms. Question 3 is, how do I pick my beta readers? Once you've submitted your request for beta readers, you might get an onslaught of requests, or you might just get a few. Even if you only get 2, that doesn't mean that you should use both of them. How do you narrow down the pool or decide whether or not you want to use that beta? The questions that you came up with earlier should help you with this. As a rule of thumb, I think most of your beta readers should be a part of your target audience. If you're writing a political thriller, then make sure that most of your beta readers read primarily in that genre. Note that age does not necessarily mean target audience here. A majority of young adult readers are actually in the 30 to 44-year-old range. Your target audience is whoever would like your genre, so make sure you don't put any age restrictions on that. Most of your beta readers should be in your target audience, but not all of them. You want a wide range of opinions on your novel, including those that might think differently. They may have some critiques that your target audience would just miss. Do you write high fantasy but have a hint of romance in your story? Enlist someone who typically reads in romance but isn't afraid to read high fantasy. They can tell you whether your budding romance is a dud or the bomb, perhaps with more specificity than with your other betas. Their turnaround rate might be another huge factor in whether you decide to go with them or not, as well as their history giving critiques to other writers. Go through your list of potentials and narrow them down on how well you think they would fit your story and the type of feedback that you want to have. Common question number 4, what editing process should I use for my betas? This is something you're probably going to have to develop on your own a little bit. Most people have a list of questions they want their betas to answer, and I highly recommend using this method. I also think it's good to send only one chapter out at a time, or make sure that they answer your specific questions at the end of each chapter before they actually move on. This ensures that each chapter is given equal attention and the reader doesn't move on 3 chapters later and forget what they wanted to say before. Some good questions to ask could be, what's your overall opinion of this chapter? Did you like it or did you hate it? What did you think of the characters? Is there anything that you found that was confusing? Are there certain parts that you don't think were necessary at all? Do you have any predictions for the future? And then each chapter could have even more specific questions to them. If you're at the climax of the novel, ask the reader if it feels climactic. If a lot of readers feel that it doesn't, then you've got some editing ahead of you. If the beta just read a chapter that has a steamy scene in it, ask them if it felt cheesy at all. Is there a heartbreaking scene? Then ask if it evoked any emotions in them. I've had a lot of success with discussing the reader's feedback after they give it. I have a list of questions that each beta answers after they finish reading. I get those answers back, and then I talk to them about their responses. Mostly this involves asking why, because a lot of times you have to dig for information. I didn't like George in this chapter. Okay, well, figure out why. You might have to prompt them a little bit, like, did you not like his hair, or did you not like this, that, or the other? And then the reader might say, well, I'm just not sure. It's okay if they're not able to get to the bottom of it, but it's really helpful if they can finally say, well, I just didn't like the way he treated Maria. Don't be afraid to ask your beta reader more questions, but make sure that you're never confrontational. It's hard to take criticism with grace, but you asked for their help. They're doing you a huge favor by being your beta reader. Question 5, what if betas try to plagiarize my work? This is probably the #1 reason why people are so hesitant to try beta readers, above the fear of receiving negative feedback. This part is pretty simple. In the US, your work is copyrighted from the moment that you write it down. There's fancy schmancy verbiage to this that I will include in a link down below. If it makes you feel any better, you can have a paragraph that explains the legal ramifications if somebody were to try to steal your work. They may be forced to pay you for the earnings that you lost due to their plagiarism, in addition to covering attorney fees. You can also keep copies of your beta correspondence as proof that they saw the early workings of your novel. Most people don't fish for stories requiring beta reading though. If they want to get to the juicy and good bits, they've got to go through all of your questions and drills and all of the chapters leading up to the good parts. Most people want to be beta readers because they're either a fan of your work or they love to read new stories or help other writers out. Most beta readers tend to be nice people in that way. Does that mean they won't be mean sometimes? Absolutely not. You can find yourself going through quite a few of those meanies, but that's part of the process. Hopefully you'll have more good than bad, but if you don't, then keep searching for those goodies. Your story is yours the moment that you wrote it, but that doesn't mean that you forever own the rights to vampire stories. If you ever find anything that's blatantly copied from your work, then you can go to the link down below, if you're in the United States, to find out what you need to do. Just know that you are protected. Alright, so I hope that was helpful for you guys that are just entering the beta reading process. Typically, the more betas that you have, the better. I usually have at least 5 in my first round, which is usually people that are a little bit closer to me. And then I think in the second phase, the more in-depth phase of your beta reading process, you should have at least 15 to 20 beta readers. That way you can notice any trends that you have amongst your beta readers, and if there's just one person that thinks that your main character sucks and none of the rest do, then you can choose to ignore that person's feedback. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I post new writing videos every Wednesday. Make sure to check out the sneak peek chapters of my novel, The Elysian Prophecy, down below. If you ever have any questions or suggestions for my new videos, just go ahead and leave a line down below. Bye guys. Rocky's being so good. I totally didn't cover a super important topic.